You're listening to the When Life Hands You Lemons podcast.
But in an entry-level film production, it's one strike and you're out. You're fired. I'm not calling you back.
If your goal today is to make a basket, we're going to make that basket.
The minute you create something, as soon as it's made tangible, you have a copyright in it.
How do I get our guys to sound that big, that full when they do the harmonies?
And I'm your host, Lennon Seahawk. Let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of When Life Hands You Lemons. My guest this week is the multi-talented Justin Gray. Now, he is a Canadian-born, Los Angeles-based songwriter, record producer, music executive, and tech entrepreneur. Over the last 12 years of his career, his projects have sold more than 40 million copies, and he has garnered more than 8 billion streams worldwide. He has worked with a number of artists, including Avril Lavigne, Mariah Carey, John Legend, David Bisbal, Luis Fonsi, and Joss Stone, among others. Now, Justin and I dive into a number of topics, one of them being how he's creative during the coronavirus pandemic. It's definitely an interesting time, and I'm always curious to hear how people are staying creative and productive during this time. We also dig into how he's worked in sync licensing and how he conforms to the production standards that are within sync licensing. And he actually finds more creativity when he has limitations, which I thought was very interesting. So we talk about that a little bit too. And towards the end of the episode, we dig into how he's diversified himself in the music business. It's very important to do that. He's a songwriter. He's a music producer. He's a tech entrepreneur. He owns his own company called Midio. So we dig into all that and why it's important and how he's done that as well. Now, before I let us go and you go into letting Justin tell his story, I want to remind you to please sign up to my mailing list as it helps me notify you when new episodes are live. You can also sign up on my website, which is lennonseahawk.com. Links are in the show notes below. I'd appreciate if you would follow me on Instagram as well. I kind of post some podcast stuff there, and you can keep up with my daily personal life if that so interests you. I would also appreciate a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It helps the show get discovered by new listeners. And lastly, if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, please fill out the guest request form in the show notes below as well. So without further ado, let's jump in to my conversation with the amazingly talented Justin Gray. Yeah, well, thanks for being on. We're both here in LA. It's kind of an Armageddon time for both of us. What have you been working on? What have you been working on during quarantine? Are you going to the studio? Do you have a studio to go to?
Yeah,
or?
I'm in my studio right now, so I've been like double quarantining. I'm quarantining, but then I'm also in the studio quarantining. So, I'm having this conversation with people a lot. I think it's a really interesting time right now. I think that if people are disciplined and focused, it's a great time. And I think if you are, kind of like lazy, it's not a great time.
Yeah.
I think it's really as simple as that. For me personally, I think I'm going to look back at 2020 as almost like the opportunity to kind of recalibrate my career without the distractions of, writing sessions I don't really want to do or parties that I don't want to go to or whatever, so I'm just able to really focus. And this year's been about kind of 3 things for me. One has been, I founded a music tech startup called Midio, which stands for Music Data Intelligence In and Out. And I also am in the process of building up a record label management publishing company called Anti-Gravity with my partner, Brad Aarons. And I'm developing a couple of cool creative little things. I'm developing an animated TV show. So all of these things are, it's a lot of fun. And again, I'm not distracted by, writing sessions I don't want to do and people I don't want to see. So the days have been very, very productive for me personally.
Did you find that you would have had this productivity if it weren't for quarantine? I know you mentioned you don't want to do songwriting sessions in that, but do you think that because of this quarantine that has really pushed you to really
I don't think
focus
there's
on
a choice, right? I don't think there's a choice. I think that there's some people that look at, and I have to admit, probably like everybody else, the first couple of weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, I was feeling, I'm not productive enough. And, everybody sort of seemed to make a point of trying to be super productive and just like, oh, I'm not gonna, now, I'll work an 18-hour day, but if it's a Tuesday at 3 o'clock and I want to turn on Netflix, I will. Like, I'm not harping on myself as much as I was earlier. And yeah, and I am being more productive. And do I think I would have been as productive? Maybe differently. I mean, definitely when I look at the development of Mideo and I look at the development of anti-gravity and of this animated thing I'm working on, having the extra time has helped those kind of, the momentum has helped those kind of grow, I think, faster than if I was, at 8 hours in the middle of my day was occupied by songwriting.
Sure. So you do a little bit of everything. You're a songwriter, you're a music producer, you've done a lot of stuff for film and TV. You're a music tech entrepreneur, you're doing an animated TV series. Talk a little bit about each project and how did you get into music, first of all?
Well, this is I'll try and make this story as quick as possible. In my what I call my past life, which was many years ago and many pounds ago, I was an aspiring professional hockey player, and when that didn't work out, I always had music as a fallback. Even when I was a young boy, I started. My dad played piano, so there was always music in the house. We always listened to music in the car, so I was I was very immersed in music even from a young age, and so as a fallback, it wasn't too big of a fallback, is my point. Once my hockey career was kind of over, I just pivoted and went straight into music, and then kind of went all in. So while I was at university, I was in bands. While I was in high school, I was in bands. I was just always around it, and I loved it. I loved it so much. And even though I was talented at hockey, I really loved music. And like I said, my dad was a singer in the '60s, and so it was just a natural sort of pivot. And I'm grateful. And I was born in Montreal, Canada. Then I moved to Toronto with my family. Then I moved away to play hockey, and then now eventually I moved here to LA, and I'm super grateful. But I mean, that's sort of like the quick version of the story.
Sure.
But I was always writing songs as a kid. I mean, as a kid, I was writing songs. I was always playing the piano or the guitar, all self-taught. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
I was just, I just loved it.
And how long have you been in LA now?
13 years. It's gonna be
wow.
It's gonna be 13 years in November. Yeah, I mean, we came out here. We moved out here at the end of 2017, and November 15th, as a matter of fact. That's sort of like our LA birthday. And basically, I was producing records in Canada. As I was coming up, I was writing songs and producing records in Canada. And in 2001, I was nominated as Producer of the Year for the Juno Awards, which is kind of like our Grammys.
Sure.
Of course, Canadian music is much more popular now, like Drake and
Bieber.
And Bieber, and I mean, it's just like the list goes on. And Jesse Reyes. I mean, it's very pop, Party Next Door, whatever. And I stayed in Canada from continued working. And around 2004, I sort of felt like the writing was on the wall. It was if I wanted to elevate my career, I needed to make some changes. And fortunately, my wife was super cool, and she was down with the adventure. And it took a couple of years to kind of really muster up the courage, and we made the move. We had I had a young daughter at the time, and we just had our second baby. So when we moved here, she was 8 weeks old, which is insane.
Oh, wow.
Now it's like moving a whole family with no support
To another country.
with an 8-week-old, and a 3-year-old.
Wow.
Was I'm not sure I would do it again.
Yeah, sure.
But then I came here, and our support was I had a manager here in LA, and just stuck my nose to the grindstone and started to write with everybody that I could, and I wanted to establish a name for myself in the community, and so that's what I did. And so I spent the last 13 years basically writing as much as I can, producing as much as I can, expanding my network, growing my network, meeting people, and it's been amazing. It's been an amazing adventure. I'm very grateful and thankful.
Yeah, and it's funny because you had a career in hockey and you switched to music, but normally it's the other way around. They're passionate about music, and they just kind of like, it didn't work out. So then they go to hockey or whatever it is. So it's interesting that you went that way.
Yeah, I mean, I just never, my fallbacks were never really realistic, if that makes
Sure.
sense. Like, like my fallback was never, I'm going to go work with my dad, or I'm going to, use my journalism, I went to journalism, I went to university for journalism, for a journalism degree. So I was just like, I don't know, it just never seemed like an option. And, and I will give my wife credit. Before we were married, I remember having a bit of an existential crisis, and I called her and she said, I said, I don't know if this producing thing is for me. And she said, I mean, obviously we were going to get married, and she said, I don't want to spend the rest of my life with an unhappy person. So, and that was very powerful. I remember, very, 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 I remember it very well. I remember where I was in Toronto when she made that phone call, and when I made that phone call to her, and she was right. And so, and she's been incredibly supportive and has been there to help me pursue this dream. And so far, so good.
Yeah, definitely. You've got the line of credits to show for it. I was reading your website and everything before we jumped on, and I mean, you've got film and TV, and I watched the Toy Story 4. Did you compose that or do that whole the trailer song for that?
Yeah, Toy Story 4 that was a song. I have a project that I'm involved with called Black and Gray with my partner Bo Black.
Sure.
I'm the gray. He's the black. I'm the gray.
Okay.
And we've been very lucky. We've done a bunch of stuff together that has found its way to film and TV. Over the years, it started with an AT&T commercial. We worked on Mercedes Benz. That was Toy Story. It's funny the way that songs get placed. It's not quite as proactive as I think people think. I mean, it is to a degree, but it's funny. Sometimes you have these songs that find their ways into television shows or TV and film and advertising, and you talk to the music supervisor and they're like, "Oh, I heard this song 4 years ago and I was just trying to find the perfect opportunity for it." So, sometimes you just got to do the work and put it out there, and you hope that it's making an impression enough on somebody that eventually they will, maybe take it. And that's actually what's interesting about why I really started Midio as a songwriter, which is just mdiio.com. The idea was, I looked at my career and I was like, okay, the opportunities for music and for placement in music and TV, I've been able to sort of, I wouldn't say master it, but I've been very lucky, and I've put myself in this path of opportunity. But there's so many young songwriters, creators, bands, whatever, that are just, they just don't even know, they don't even know what the first step is. They don't know who to get their music to. They don't know how to get their music out. They think, I'm going to put my stuff up on YouTube and Spotify or whatever, and they're just like, and let's see what happens. And the likelihood of things catching fire like that is pretty low. I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but it's hard. And
I mean, there's 40,000 songs that go up every day on Spotify.
Insane, right? Insane. I mean,
how do you stand out?
So right. So who's going to listen to mine?
Right.
So one of the things that we're developing now in Midio is this new service called Midio Plus, which actually says, hey, if you're a band or you're an artist or you're a songwriter or whatever, upload your song to Midio Plus. We will automatically add it to our licensable library. And we're working on a bunch of deals right now. We're going to have, hundreds of thousands of searches a year going through this publicly available library for licensing. So it's a great, if you're an upstart band or a young artist and you're looking for an opportunity to just even try and get placements and try and create some economics around your music, this is a perfect place to start, and we're eager to help anybody that is, that wants to be helped.
So I had on Tuesday, I actually had a conversation with a music supervisor, and the sync licensing world is something that I've really immersed myself in recently, and I've learned a lot about it. Because at work we launched a course doing sync licensing and all that stuff. So it's been something that I've been very interested in for the last 5 years, and just recently have really kind of been able to be immersed in it, and it's very intriguing to me. So can you talk us through how it kind of works a little bit, because it's very detailed. Like we could have a whole season of podcasts on just sync licensing alone. But can you talk us like how you maybe write a song specifically for a project, or how do you keep in mind like maybe standards that you have, or how do you write music for a project?
Those are all great questions, and I'll try to answer them as succinctly as possible. So there's kind of I would say there's three ways to kind of approach how you write for sync, right? Sometimes if you're lucky, I've been lucky enough to work with major film studios and major television studios, and they say, look, we're looking for something very specifically like this, and they'll give you an extremely detailed brief. Oftentimes they'll say, here's 5 songs that we like, and here's why we like these 5 songs. For obvious reasons, they can't license those, so they want to write something original. Oftentimes they'll give you the script, and they'll say, this is the scene that we are writing a song for, and here's the script. And we don't want the narrative of the song to be totally on the head, but we want it to be enough that it kind of feels like it supports what's happening on screen. So that's kind of the first way to do it, and I enjoy writing to that. I mean, it's almost like they've in many ways, it's like they've handed you this beautiful picture and a bunch of crayons and said, fill this in for us, right?
So how do you give yourself creative freedom in those with so many strict guidelines? Like I'm just getting anxiety. It's a lot of fun for you?
No, go ahead. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I just like I get anxiety just thinking about like, oh, I have so many guidelines. Like, what if what I write they don't like?
Well, it's funny. I actually find there's more freedom in the constriction of the guidelines than there is. It's like if for example, right? Let's put it this way. Let's have this conversation. We'll speak in abstract terms for a moment, right?
Sure.
So I said, okay, here you go, Lennon. Here's a white. Here's a piece of white paper. Draw something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or I said, hey, Lennon, here's a piece of white paper. I want you to draw a house and a dog and a car and trees and grass in the sun.
Okay.
Right? So immediately you're saying, oh, okay, I have a rule set that I can sort of abide by, and then I can give you my version of the house. And oh, by the way, we want to make sure that the house has 4 windows, and we want to make sure that it's, the house takes up 2/3 of the paper, like, or whatever. Like, the point is, once they give you that, and then it becomes, oh, this is Lennon's version of a house. This is Justin's version of a house. This is whoever's version of a house. And then they can judge the best, but they know they want a house. I know that's speaking abstractly, right?
Yeah.
So to me, when you're looking at a brief from a TV studio or an ad agency or whatever it is, right? You're able to create, in my mind, at least I can sort of visually see and understand where it is that I am, what it is, why do they like that song? Is it the kick drum? Is it the way the chords are moving? Okay, so let's make chords that kind of have this happy feeling, or what, I'm like, whatever, right? Why does the melody work? Well, the melody goes up. Is there a pickup into the downbeat of the chorus, or does the chorus hit and then comes the vocal melody? Like, all you try to sort of like dissect, why do they like this? Why do these things work for them? And then once you have your tools, you know what you're building, right? As opposed to going wildly in the wrong direction. So in the way of writing to brief and in a context, I actually find that much more liberating, because there's so many things I don't have to think about.
Got it.
And that makes life easy. Like Steve Jobs famously wore the same thing every day and drove the same car, because it was just less things to think about. It helped him be more creative. So when I look at it that way, but having said that, there's the other side of writing for film and TV, which is stuff that is not specific to a project, right? So it's like, okay, we want to write something that feels like it can be used for a film and TV opportunity, or a trailer, or an advertise, whatever. That's a little bit different. You try and stick in that case. You try and stick to common themes. Again, I do become, for me, and I would suggest anybody that wants to get into this, become a student of the environment. So it's like, watch TV. Why is that song in the commercial? Like, it drives my wife insane. Every time I hear something, I'm constantly Shazamming it, right? Like, I'm like, what is that? I want to know, because I go, why does that work? I know why that works. And then you kind of start to learn and understand the trends. And that's actually something that we're doing at Mideo. Not that I'm trying to pull it back to that, but something that we're doing at Mideo is, if you're a member of Mideo Plus, we're going to give you trends and analytics, not only around your own songs, but around what's happening and around how to write something that could better work for potential placement. And what's really interesting about the way film and TV works is that it's almost timeless. I mean, it's not really timeless per se, but you could, the Toy Story 4 is a perfect example. That song that we did, that was a song that I did for Black and Gray in 2016.
Oh, wow.
Right?
So you composed, it was out before they actually
That's
used
right.
it.
We did that. So we did that song in 2016 as part of our project, Black and Gray.
Sure.
Nobody paid attention to it.
Right.
You're just like, okay. We had one small little placement in a show called Hawaii Five-0 at the time, I know. And then 3 years later, we got in the same year Toy Story 4. And there's also a Xbox Game Pass over the Xbox ad, the Game Pass ad over Christmas was the same song, and so they have a life of their own, and they sort of kind of mature and bubble up, kind of on their own. Sometimes you put a song out and it gets licensed. Doesn't get licensed at all. Other times you put out a song that gets licensed 20 times. So, I think that, but if you're going to creatively approach writing, it's like, I always say this, you're writing to project an emotion. So it's like, it's like you look at like brands, right? Like every brand to me, and I'm not sure anybody's written a book or anybody's really qualified it this way, but if you look at a brand and I said, okay, and you'll start to notice this, like if you see a Samsung advertisement on TV or something, right? You'll hear that there's a sonic that correlates to the brand, right? It's like, there was a time where T-Mobile was very rock oriented. Samsung, if you listen to it, it's very rhythmic, very beat oriented, very, very rhythmic heavy, right? And it's like you kind of learn to associate stylistically what works for certain options, right? Like car ads are very guitar-y. You know what I mean? Like, so you kind of learn, and once you sort of streamline that focus, I think how you write for film and TV crystallizes. Just another little small tip: avoid don't, can't, negative implications. Any negative lyrics. Try and have a lot of parts, because a lot of times music editors that are putting these commercials together or these TV shows, they will chop these songs up like crazy.
Their product that's not going to work for their product. They're not going to say their product can't do this.
Yes, correct. Like, I can't tell you how many times we'll sit in sessions and it'll be like, I don't know, someone might say something like, can't stop this. You'd be like, what if it was like gonna keep going, or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
Obviously that's a crude example, but you get the point. And so yeah, but and also when you're making the songs, make sure that every section, don't just copy and paste. Spend a little extra time. Make sure that you're giving them a down chorus, then you're giving them a medium chorus, and you're giving them a big chorus at the end. But the second verse, maybe it's a rap, but the first verse is singing. It's like it still feels linear like a song, but they can chop around and use the parts that they want.
Sure. That's a good point, because I've actually been doing that myself, is taking, like, when I'm watching TV, just taking note of some of the styles that are being placed. Like, for example, when you see a prescription drug, it's always very uplifting and happy and kind of dancey. Well, because they got to make it happy with all the long list of side effects that can happen.
That's right.
So it's got to be happy.
Jing, you might die if you take this drug. So
you might die. You might develop. You might lose your hair. You might lose your eyesight. Your teeth might fall out. Here's a happy ukulele song. So they got to make it happy to some extent.
That's right. Yeah.
And and a lot of, like you said, the car commercials are very like high energy. Some of them are dance, and a lot of like the T-Mobile, Samsung, Apple, they're very like electronic, because it's very like technology, cutting edge. It feels like it's on the verge of something. And just taking note of those themes, and even like in context things where you're watching a TV show and there's a song placed there. Why does it work there? Why does that song specifically work there? Because it's very emotional, because it's sad, because of this, chord progression or whatever it is. So as you kind of learn these things, and you're like, okay, I really want to, I have the style of getting into a car commercial, or, for me personally, I think I would fit better in the like tech world, like a Samsung commercial, because I do electronic music. So what are the next steps after that? Do you pick like 6 commercials and you listen to the music and then try to write something with that? Or do you just go ham and just start writing a bunch of stuff without watching those and just start pitching? Like, what are the next steps once you're like, I got this, I think I'm ready?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, and of course there's no judgment here, but sometimes people think that they're ready, and then they realize 2 years later that they weren't ready when they thought they were, but now they're ready. And,
Sure.
but that doesn't mean anything. I think that the number one way to take the next step is, let's assume everything else is cool. Let's assume you're making good music, and that's not the part. That's not the trouble spot, right? The trouble spot then becomes, where are my relationships? Who do I, is there a song plugger? Go and do research. We're living in a very unique time right now where you can reach out to almost anybody through social media, and you can connect with them. And if you're really good, and if you're not annoying, and and you respect people's kind of like social space, most of the time people will listen, and they'll say, "Oh man, Lennon, that's great. I love this thing. This is great. You should meet so and so." So the most important thing, I think, number one rule is sit back and go, how do I expand my network? How do I create my community of people, right? Like I look at, I'm obviously a lot older than you are, but I still do business with people that I've met 20 years ago when I was just starting in this business. Sure. It's I don't know what the tolerance is for language, but number one rule, meet people, don't be an asshole, and be talented and do good work. And I think that if you do that and you stick to it long enough, eventually it's going to happen. But I think that what happens to a lot of young talent that I meet is, they think it happens quickly. They're judging their year 1 against my year 20 and going, why am I not getting all of those placements? Like, it takes a long time to build up those relationships and find people that believe in you and that you can trust. And I think you have to create and define, what does success mean to you? And then once you make that determination, try to reach that bar. And once you do, reset that bar and go, okay, what's the next step? So if to you success is, well, I want to get a placement in a TV show. Okay, well, how am I going to do that? What are the steps that are going to do that? Okay, I need to meet music supervisors. I need to meet people that are making the decisions on what songs get into what shows. I need to be accessible. I need to be releasing music. I need to, you have to sit back and almost game plan and strategize and blueprint how are those steps that you're going to make. And I've sort of come up with this concept on my own called the critical path, which is basically saying, okay, where am I today? Where do I want to be? What are the steps that are going to get me there? And anything else that doesn't fit the bill, anything else that doesn't tick the box, that's not on the critical path. I don't do it. And and I just think it's how do you create those priorities for yourself? So, and by the way, once you start going down that, like I could say, here's a perfect example. You're a young songwriter and you want to get into film and TV, join the Guild of Music Supervisors. There you go, right? Like straight away you have access. Straight away you can now you can participate in their annual annual general meetings. You can start creating relationships, right? And again, don't be overbearing, don't be like a weirdo, but be like cool. Mm-hmm. Be like, you did, Keir Lehman, oh my God, I love Lego movies. I'm such a big fan. Wow, great job. Or like, and do some research, go to school, educate yourself.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I attended a webinar that they hosted. They had our instructor from one of our courses was a panelist on there, Vo Williams, and they had AG in there, and they hosted, it was an incredible webinar.
Yeah.
That the Guild of Music Supervisors. So that's an incredible suggestion. That's a good. I recommend everybody join that.
Yeah, join the guild. Join SONA, Songwriters of North America.
Yeah.
Just dip your foot in the water. Like I mean, you will see. I guarantee anybody that if they really put in the effort, they will see their network expand. And when their network and write with tons of people, collaborate with people. Find good collaborators and bad collaborators and experience and learn and get better at your craft. Understand your position in a room. Sometimes I'm a record producer and a songwriter. Sometimes my job is to sit there and just literally referee in the room and make sure that and sometimes my job is quality control. Sometimes my job is I need to instigate the idea or else we're just going to sit here and look at each other like idiots. You'll learn if you're really good and smart, you'll learn where you fit in the dynamic of the room that you're in, and that's that's what you do that day. That's your role that day. So yeah.
So how many if somebody wants to get into sync, how many songs do they need to have ready to go?
One if it's amazing.
One if it's amazing.
Honestly, one if it's amazing. And look, again, I'm not going to drop numbers, but I have a song
Sure.
that if you turn on the TV at any point anywhere in America, you're going to see my song as part of a Target ad right now, and that song has been re-upped 4 times with Target in the last 2 years. Has made a really an astronomical amount of money on sync fees, and that song has also been licensed 15 other times to other different products. So sometimes one song could do it. But what I would suggest to somebody is, especially if you're a producer, maybe create different projects so you don't have to be stuck in a box. So I have Black and Gray, which is very much like a rock project. I have another project called Hype Monster. I have another project called Retro City All Stars. Those are all with totally legitimate artists. It's a real thing. They're not like fake projects. And I collaborate and build these brands of music for film and TV. And Black and Gray is known for a certain thing, and Hype Monster is known for a certain thing, and Retro City All Stars is known for a certain thing, and they're basically just, I'm creating lanes for opportunities. So so yes, it's one amazing song, but you should just be creative, and you don't have to write 1,000 songs in a year.
Right. Don't put that pressure on yourself, because I think it's gonna hinder. It would hinder me.
Yeah, do it if it feels good, but
Yeah.
I think it's a lot better to come in, look at your instead of looking at your in case your case Logic, or for me Ableton or Pro Tools, and just be like, what do I do today? Don't do that. Give your what is the if you have this canvas, it doesn't always have to be blank. You can walk in knowing what you're going to draw on it, and that's going to be okay too. Like sometimes you might listen to something, especially, I mean, I do this all the time. I'll hear something on an ad or in a film or something, and I'll be like, oh my God, that's so good. What would my version of that be? And who is the person I'm going to collaborate with that on? Because I know that they can bring to the table that swag that it needs, or whatever, So, I just think that always be listening, always be inventing, always be creating, and then eventually it's going to happen, and something's going to break through if you sort of follow these sort of rules. I guess in a way, it's good. It'll break through. It'll happen.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've opened projects. I mainly work in FL Studio, but I use Logic. I prefer Logic to do like mixing and editing.
Right.
I just find it much more fluent. But I've heard a song where I'm like, I really like that kick drum, and I found a similar kick sample, and I've kind of modified it, and built projects around that.
Yeah.
So it's like, you just be creative, like you said.
I think that's a great. You know what? It's so you said something. I'm going to expand on what you just said, because I think that there's something that's very, very important for people to understand. Like, you don't know where inspiration is going to come from. You find a kick drum that you love. You just like you said, you can build a whole record around that kick drum, or a sound, or something weird. So I think that you have to kind of just always be in tune to your surroundings, and use that. I mean, like, I see songwriters that don't have, if I see a songwriter that doesn't have like, anything less than 200 ideas in their voice memos, they're not really taking this seriously. Like, and sometimes it's like, I find it cool, and we live in the DVR universe now. So you hear something cool, but rewind, voice memo. I want to record that because I like the way the kick and the snare feel. I like the swing of the kick and the snare. Maybe I don't like anything else in the song, but I like that, it's just amazing where you can find that inspiration from if you're listening.
Mm-hmm. And another tool that I've used a lot is a website called TuneFind.
Okay.
And I'm sure you've heard of it, where you can look up any TV show, and you can find, for those who are listening, like if there's a specific episode where you really liked a song at a certain part, you can find that song. Most of the time it's in there, and it'll tell you what song it is. You can go on Spotify or Apple Music and listen to it. So that's a great, if you know the episode and the show you're watching, you can definitely look
again,
that up.
I want to expand on what you're saying. I think that there's no shortage of really great resources out there.
Absolutely.
And it's funny, and I don't want to disparage writers, but I love writers that come into the studio with their notebook and their pen, and they're like, I don't use computers. I'm like, why? Why not? Like, you want to let's go find good rhymes for the word orange. Like, you might as well, let's not handcuff ourselves. Let's use every single tool that's available to us. And TuneFind's a great one. Honestly, how many times are you in a writing session and all of a sudden you're referencing Spotify, or you go to Splice because you just want somebody that's going to help you, like, just jump off an idea, right? It's like, use those tools. They will help you. They will help you do better. They will help you write better songs.
Absolutely. And it doesn't diminish your craft or your
At all.
creativity if you have to use them. Like, they're there for a reason. Use them.
Absolutely, not at all. And I think people feel weird about it. And I don't know. And I must admit, I used to feel weird. I'm like, oh, is it cheating? I don't feel like that at all anymore. I think that, no, I don't think it's cheating. I think it's like I don't know. It's like trying to play hockey with a baseball bat. Like, it's still sports. Like, I don't know. That was a weird analogy. I don't know. You can erase that. But the point is, like, why not give yourself all the tools? Sometimes I speak to young singers and they're like, I don't use autotune. I'm like, okay, well, we won't. And then of course they leave the room and then I melodyne the vocal. But why not? Why wouldn't you give yourself and grant yourself the tools to make whatever you're doing the best it could be?
Yeah, and to go off of that, like, sometimes playing hockey with a baseball bat might actually work better for you, and you might have more fun doing it.
It would be weird, but maybe.
Yeah, you might have a little bit tougher time, but it might work for you, and you might get something really cool out of it. And
Yeah.
I so many people knock, like, oh, you're using a certain loop or a sample, and it's like, who cares? The song is great. What difference does it make?
Yeah, I agree. I've gotten over that.
Yeah, it
that,
gets.
that handicap. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't view it as a handicap anymore either. It's gotten so worn out. But anyways, going back a little bit, I like what you said about the projects. Can you explain a little bit more about what you mean by you have like 3 or 4 different projects? Like, are they different genres? Are they different styles? Like, how do you know when to create a different project, and what do you do with them?
Well, I think this goes back to being a student of the surroundings.
Sure.
So and you said, what do you do with them? So, again, I can't express this enough. Look, I've spent 20 plus years building relationships across this whole business: managers, music supervisors, song pluggers, publishers, record labels, A&R people. Like, you get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I write something for film and TV, I already, in my mind, I understand where the outlets are. I know who I'm going to send it to. I know who I'm going to share it with. And I understand that if you're a young upstart and you're kind of learning, and I don't mean young, I mean young, I mean in terms of the evolution of your career. I don't mean your age necessarily,
Sure.
right? But
Sure.
you don't have the same benefits of 20 years of relationships that you can lean on, right? But what I think is important is it's like why would you take all of your money and bet it on one thing and hope that it comes through? So for me, if I'm looking and going, oh, okay, what is kind of like popping off right now? Like, it seems like Sampa the Great is getting tons of love at film and TV. I don't really have anything like that. Who do I have in my life that I know, based on my career of artists that I've worked with, that I can partner with on that? Like, and this is, I think, a philosophy that I personally apply in my life. Okay, so I have a great idea. Sometimes it's not, but let's say it is a great idea. And I go, okay, I can't do this myself. Who do I have in my life that I can partner with, who will get this, who can fulfill the part that I can't myself do, right? And it doesn't mean that I'm controlling. It's like, hey, I want to invent a flying car. Okay, who in my life do I know that can engineer a flying car, right? Like so, and that's the way I look at these projects, right? Like, for example, Hype Monster is a great example. I have my collaborator on that is a guy named Marty James. Marty wrote Despacito for Luis Fonsi, massive, like one of the biggest songs in the history of pop music. But what we do on Hype Monster is so perfect for what he does that we created this project, Hype Monster. We've done like 4 or 5 songs for it, right? And again, it fits a very specific lane. It's like, I look at the trends and I see, okay, people are loving it. LMFAO is a band, for example, that is just constantly getting licensed, right? So how do we fill that gap? And so that's what Hype Monster is. Hype Monster is like, it's in that LMFAO world, it's in that Black Eyed Peas world, it's super fun, it's high tempo, it's a lot of energy, or like Run the Jewels, like it's sort of like in that universe. so I was like, okay, Marty's the guy I want to do Hype Monster with. But for example, Retro City All Stars is a project that I do with an artist that's signed to my label Anti Gravity named Romel. But he's the singer for Retro City because he's got that sort of Sam Cooke kind of very retro old school vibe. Again, super popular, right? Like these like throwback, soulful '60s, kind of funk R&B records, super popular. Otis Redding. What do you have that sounds like Otis Redding? What do you have that sounds like James Brown or whatever? Right? It's like Al Green. He's perfect for that. So we created Retro City All Stars, all driven by people with commercial pop success. So that's what makes it feel real. And we always approach these songs from we don't think of them as sync songs. We approach them as artists, but we have it in the back of our mind that we want to keep the message positive. The melodies have to be a certain way. The productions have to be a certain way. And that's how we do it. Then Black and Gray is again, that's a rock project. None of them overlap with each other. They all sort of have their own lanes. And then again, through years of developing relationships, I'm able to hand it off to people that can help me, monetize and exploit these songs.
So when you're reaching out and you've got the connections, I mean, you've got 20 years of connections, and people who start today will be able to have in 20 years the same connections that you have if they put in the work.
Actually, I disagree. They'll be able to have those connections in 3 years if they do it right.
True. That's true. That's a valid point. Good point. But so once you're reaching out and you've got all these connections, and you've had such success with so many different projects, what are some of the how do you get into like negotiating what the sync fees are going to be? Like, you obviously have more leverage now that you've had so much success, but how does somebody get into kind of leveraging and negotiating their sync fees?
That's a great question. So the first thing that I think somebody needs to understand who's new to this is that you can have the same song get synced for $25 and then get synced for $1,500. And the value of the license is not connected to the song; it's connected to the usage of that license, right? So, and even though there's no like quote unquote rate card, meaning it's not like, well, you pay this and then it costs that, and if you want that, there's a sort of an understanding, right? Like, for example, if there's a basic understanding that if you if you're a sort of an unknown, meaning you're not like you're not Bruno Mars or whatever, like you're you're us, you're Black and Gray, right? There's if you're in a film and TV trailer, there's sort of like a kind of like an understanding, at least in film, that fee should be somewhere on the low side $70,000, on the high side $100,000, right? Like that, and when I say, and I mean for both sides, meaning $50,000 for the publisher side, $50,000 for the person that owns the master. Sure. This, again, it's sort of like a standardized kind of understanding. But that same song that we maybe just got $100,000 for a trailer, for a film, we would license that to, in show for, Hawaii Five-0 for $7,500, right? Or that song was actually in the same year that we got an absolute six figures for it for one usage. We licensed it for $250 to Fox Sports for to be used during their broadcast of some football game or whatever. So the value of the song is based on the type of usage that it is. So it's not like, well, I got this last time. Well, no, it's we just went through something with another song of mine, and I knew what the fee was going to be before we even did the quote, because I know it's consistent with what that song is for what that usage is. So, there is some negotiation. Oftentimes what happens is if there are multiple collaborators on a song, and let's say there's multiple publishers, one publisher might quote one fee and the second publisher might quote a higher fee. And they do something what's called MFN, which is most favored nations, which means the person that quoted the highest that got accepted, everybody pays that. So if the two of us write a song and my publisher quotes $1 and your publisher quotes $2, then we all participate in the $2 fee. So there is some room for negotiation, but I've always said this: It's not like you license a song one time and that's it. The song's done. You can take
Sure.
that same song and you can license that song 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not like I've gotten this, I've had this song recorded by an artist and, let's cross our fingers and hope it's a hit. You can literally license a song indefinitely and infinitely. And yeah, there's no, I mean, sometimes I might go, well, that song's been really exposed. What do you have that's like it? But for the most part, licenses can be done over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. And, you could retire off of one placement and many placements.
I mean, if you're lucky. I mean,
If you're lucky, yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, it can be very lucrative, and it's if you do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
If you do it the right way and you build it the right way, and you're smart, and it can be extremely lucrative.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, going back, I could hear a song that I heard in a prescription commercial. I'm not going to remember what song that is.
Right.
So, I mean, it makes sense for them to keep using it in other projects unless
That's right. They know it works.
They know it works. And because typically you're not going to remember what song Bounty used as their music bed. Like,
you will if you're the one that wrote the song.
Yes, you absolutely will because you're getting checks for it. But I mean, the average consumer is not going to know, oh, that song's from that Bounty commercial.
That's right. That's exactly right. And look, there's a big difference between a jingle and writing for film and writing stuff that, like we don't ever, whenever I'm collaborating on doing music for film and TV, it's never like, this is going to be great in a Bounty commercial. We just kind of do stuff that we feel like is cool.
Sure.
And again, if you look at, it's funny, prescription ads are like the one that kills me is Trilogy. Trilogy. The ABC 1, 2, 3 one. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
But everything that we do has to feel cool.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there's a lot of brands out there and a lot of TV shows and a lot, where they want to feel associated to cool. They want to get all of the sort of the accoutrement of being of being cool, right? And that's like when you look at Samsung, when you look at Apple was actually always a great example of a licensor that wanted cool shit. Like even if you looked at Jet, who probably most famously was basically born out of an Apple ad and went on to have a tremendous career with "Are You Going to Go My Way" and other things. Like, their brands want to be associated to cool, so you can't make cheesy stuff. Like nobody will take cheesy stuff. It's always got to be cool.
Mm-hmm. And like with Apple, you can always expect, like when they do their iPhone unveiling, that song is going to be just cutting edge. It's going to fit so perfectly. It just has a completely unique sound to it.
Well, and I think that there's something that people need to understand. Like, they've tried 100 songs against that visual.
Yeah.
And they've had 50 people with 50 opinions and test markets. And, so by the time that you see that thing on TV with something like Apple, it has been scrutinized to death. And, look, those are home runs. I've been fortunate in my career to hit home runs. A couple times a year I get to hit a home run, but they're not easy. Like they're not. I mean, they're like I said. I mean, they'll try out 100 songs, and it can be frustrating. And so, but again, that's the game. And of course, when you hit that home run, it can change everything.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So now transitioning a little bit, there was a great tangent on sync licensing and everything, and I could talk about that all day because it just fascinates me. But one thing that you've done very well is you've really diversified yourself. You're a music producer, you're a songwriter, you're a business owner and music tech entrepreneur. You've done everything. Yeah. So can you talk about the importance of diversifying yourself and maybe some different ways an artist can diversify or a producer can diversify themselves? Yeah,
I mean, again, it took me a long time to understand it. And I really was able to glean this information from other people that I respected in my career. Mm-hmm. For the longest time, we're also tunnel focused on, I'm a producer, that's what I do. It's like, well, yeah, that is what you do, but that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that you have to do. Mm-hmm. And again, when you collect relationships over years, you start like, I'm sure that you could speak to a friend of yours and be like, you might have somebody that is an awesome artist, and you have an idea for a t-shirt line. Do it. Like, do it. Be like, you know what? I can't draw for shit, but Jenny is an amazing artist, and I have this idea of doing this cool t-shirt line. Let's do it. And I'm going to go and find somebody that can make t-shirts. Why not? And so I think that those are the things that keep you to me, that keep my day exciting. I mean, if I had to sit every day and look at the same plugins and the same keyboard, it would drive me insane, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, and it's funny. I was just having this conversation with Brad Aarons, who's my partner in Anti-Gravity, and I said, it's really hard for me to see people that I've known over the years who can't pivot and they can't diversify and they can't open up their vision to see what things it can be. And sometimes, people don't want to do that. There's a lot of people out there that I think have a they call it a fear of success. I think there's a fear of failure. And as long as they never really go for it, they never really fail. And I've personally never been like that. I've always been like, well, I mean, let's try it. Let's see what happens. And sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. And you kind of really have to know when the patient is on life support, you need to pull the plug. And because every time you do that, you are opening up your bandwidth to whatever the next great thing that might be. And if you don't do that, you may never be able to find the space, the time, the inclination, the bandwidth to pursue whatever that next thing might be. And they're all connected. I mean, like when I look at my career, they're all connected to music in somehow. I mean, this animated series is connected to music. Obviously, the publishing management label stuff is connected to music. Obviously, my songwriting business is connected to music. My tech business is connected to music. It's so music is the overarching theme. But I think you're really doing a disservice to yourself by not seeing what is out there. I just think it makes for better stories. And to me, that's just always the way that I've been. I used to see, as I was coming up as a young producer, and I saw people that were more successful than I was having success, and then I hadn't even started to succeed yet, and their careers were already done because they were so singularly focused on one thing. And yet, when I look at 50 Cent, who made more money selling vitamin water than he ever did as a rapper, I mean, I'm just saying, like, but if you don't open yourself up to diversify, it's going to be really hard to kind of get to where you want to go. I think.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's with every business. You got to diversify if you want to succeed. It comes down to the diversification. So once you've
documented, I think that's well documented.
Absolutely. I'm starting to think about it myself. Like I have multiple things going. Like I've got the podcast. I write my own music. I've got my own like electronic music news site that I do. I've got a couple things going that I want to obviously lift off. But I just haven't had the time to designate just yet.
But just to touch on that, I think that when I look at the things that have sort of gone well for me in my career, they were things that I was focused on, I was dedicated to, I worked hard on, but they came with relative ease. And I don't mean to say that it came easily. I just mean that like things fell into place in the way that they were supposed to be. It wasn't a battle to make these pieces of the puzzle fit. And sometimes it's a battle to make the pieces of the puzzle fit. And those are the times where you kind of have to sit there and go, maybe this is not, I want it to work, but maybe this isn't working. But other times I look at other stuff that I've done and go, God, this is just coming together so beautifully because it's because it's meant to be.
Absolutely. So now that you've got so many things going on, how do you keep yourself organized? Like, I think that's a struggle with everybody is like they do one or two things and they just get like it's a discombobulated mess. So how do you keep yourself organized with everything that you're doing?
I'm a slave to my iCal. That's the first thing.
Okay.
That's a for sure.
Okay.
I was always so impressed with certain people in my life that I knew were super high functioning individuals. And I was like, they always return emails. And yet somehow they're, or text messages or whatever. And so I try to do that as much as I can. I try to be very aware of things that are that my time is well spent on and things that are a waste of time. And I try to avoid as much of the time wasters as possible, because time is finite and we only have a certain amount in a day and a certain amount in our lives. And so, ultimately the only commodity that we have is our time. And so I want to be very careful of how I spend it. So yes, I'm highly scheduled. Every day has a very similar arc to it, which is, I typically wake up around 6 or 7. I try these days. I'm trying to go for long walks, which is sort of my version of meditation. I kind of just walk and I'm by myself, or I take my dog, and then I come home and I start work in the studio, and usually the mornings are dedicated to Mideo, which is the tech company, and again, it's and then the afternoons typically the afternoons are dedicated to music and creative, and then at night it's I do a lot of work in Asia and China, so that's when my Chinese days. So the days are long, but they're very, very structured. And I think too that's a mistake that I see a lot of young people, young creatives making, is they think that structure is unsexy, and I think that structure is extremely sexy and is very necessary. And so, but that's just the way I live my life. That's just me. And so, but I see all of the people that I know that are high functioning professionals are highly structured. There is a very significant rule system that they sort of go by, and they stick to it. And again, going back to Steve Jobs, he wore the same thing every day because he didn't wake up in the morning and have to think about it. And so, I think that's the important thing, to maintain that structure. So that's how I do it. And I have other support people in my life that are extremely good at helping. In Mideo, I have my partner Curtis Cerna. He takes on a lot of the CEO type of stuff that needs to get done on a daily basis. Brad Aarons, my partner in Anti-Gravity, is a tremendous help to me. He's one of my dearest friends, but he's a super incredible. He's a real executor. I'll have the crazy idea and he knows exactly how to execute it. And then within that we have other. I have obviously other people in Mideo that help on some of the other day-to-day tasks. Same with Anti-Gravity. And personally, I just finally brought in an assistant on the music production side that can help alleviate some of the time pressure. So I'm working on delegating, but it's getting better.
That's one of my biggest downfalls is delegation. I've struggled to let stuff go, and it's like I'm getting to a point where I've realized that I have to start delegating, because I don't want to spend the time. Like, my time is better spent, rather than editing a podcast, it's better spent working on music, or it's better spent booking more guests, or focusing on the content, the quality. Sure. But yeah, I'm working on getting structure and all that stuff. And I think everybody should have some kind of structure to their day, whether it's waking up at 6 and answering emails for an hour, or it's going for a walk, and then from 9 to noon it's doing music, or whatever it is.
I just think we live in a world right now that's so topsy-turvy.
Yes.
There's so much inconsistency that you are doing yourself a disservice by not creating some semblance of structure and stability. And yes. I think, because when you do that, certain things are a certain way for sure. You can handle the chaos as it comes to you. And but if you're just literally like, whatever happens, it happens today. That doesn't work for me. For me personally, that doesn't work for me personally. It's something I'm trying to teach my kids, but they don't care.
Not yet.
They'll learn one day.
They will. Of course. Yeah, and absolutely. It's so topsy-turvy. One of the biggest helpers for me, I'm sure you can speak to this, is get off social media.
Oh my gosh.
It's so toxic there. Turn off the news. Get off the news. There's just so much stuff going on.
Well, I was listening to, I love podcasts, and I think that's so I'm excited about this one. But it's a really tremendous opportunity to create education for yourself. And I was listening to, I can't remember if it was. I'm going to sound like such a complete LA douche right now, but I can't remember if it was Deepak Chopra. I think it was Deepak Chopra. I don't think it was Eckhart Tolle, but it was one of those guys. I'm a big fan of both of them. And the question came to him was, how do you handle media? Like, how do you handle this constant barrage of media and what's true and what isn't true and what's true to you is fake to somebody else and what's, and his advice was great, and I loved it. He said, if you feel like you need to consume media for your own education, do it for 15 minutes a day. That's it. Whatever you missed today, you'll hit tomorrow in the 15-day. The news cycle is such that you won't miss anything, right? Like, so watch it, consume it for 15 minutes if you have to, shut it off. Tomorrow, consume it for 15 minutes if you have to, shut it off. You're not going to miss anything.
And the media companies will make sure of it.
Right. And you know what? I've started to do that, and I feel, especially during COVID, I feel much calmer and much saner, and when I find that I'm like agitated, I'm going, oh, of course, because CNN's on in the background or whatever is on in the background, or some asshole on Facebook posted something that made my blood boil or something.
Sure. That's happened to me a lot.
Yeah, and we're in a very, very strange time right now, and I definitely am with you. Social media toxifies the environment. It poisons the well.
It does. And so I like that. I think I might start doing that. Is 15 minutes a day, shut it off. And
you're not going to miss anything.
No, not going to miss anything. And if it's that important, somebody will text me or call me.
Correct. That's exactly.
Then I'll look into it. Then I'll make an exception. But I'm not going to go digging for it until it happens.
Yeah, I mean, look, the worst. We all have this habit, right? We're going to go to Facebook, or we're going to Snap, or we're going to go to Instagram, or whatever. We're all in this, or Twitter. It's just these terrible habits, and they don't really care because they just need the eyeballs, right? They're validated by the eyeballs, and we give it to them, and it's hard. It's a hard thing to break. It's hard, but
Facebook has been the worst for me, and I manage Facebook groups for work, so I have to be on it.
Yeah.
But every time I go on there, there's somebody posting some conspiracy theory that is easily debunked by a simple Google search, and they just are sitting there arguing, and it just makes my blood boil, and it ruins my day.
Yeah.
And I just get stressed just even thinking about it.
If you turn it on its head, you think that person. I do this a lot. I think that person, I feel bad for them. They're so obviously misguided, and they're so obviously in pain, and they're so. And by the way, they can think that about me. I really don't care, But and it's not really up to me to try and make them change their minds.
Right. And the thing is, a lot of times it's a political thing, especially now. It's like if you're arguing with somebody about politics, 10 times out of 10, you're not going to change their mind. I've argued politics with a number of people, and I don't think none of them have ever changed my mind, and I've never changed anybody else's mind.
Right. So exactly. So just what's the point?
Yeah. And my favorite recently, last tangent, my favorite recently is the ones that people share where they say that they share Facebook statuses where they say that, oh, I don't give Facebook permission to use or sell my data. And I'm like, that's not how this works.
Yeah. First of all, that train left the station about 15 years ago.
They're definitely using your data. But anyways.
Yeah, it just so happens like that I'm getting ads that are perfectly suited for my web browsing, I mean, come on. Like,
yeah.
Obviously it's, I think to me, it's very simple. You just have to understand the rules of the game and understand what you're playing, and you just can't get outraged when the game makes itself obvious to you. And that's sort of like this. Really, I think is a general rule. I do get sucked into the politics too, and it's irrelevant of which side you're on. It's not really, But if you sort of look at politics like professional wrestling, that's what it is. That's what this is to me. It's abbreviation, I think is the word. It's just bluster and loudness and rhetoric, and it's just only used to gin up the people that are already your disciples anyway. And normally that was fine, but what's sad is that we all have friends that we used to be able to have rational disagreements with, especially politically, and we could still hang out and grab sushi together. But now what's happened is it's created a divide that is affecting personal relationships, and that's very unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. I 100. I mean, I've deleted some of my friends that,
Yeah.
from high school and stuff that I'm like, oh, you were a cool person, but you're so misguided, and it's like I can't. You just the conspiracy theories and the constant rational, like like no matter what I say or tell them, like they're not going to be rational about
But
it.
you know
And it's
what? But you know what? They think the same thing about you. And
exactly.
right. And so, and again, I think when you really learn how to put that stuff into perspective,
Yes.
you know, uh, you sort of then realize, well, if I hate them for that, they probably hate me for this, and you just have to, it's funny. We talk about preaching tolerance, but I feel like people are more intolerant than ever.
Yeah.
And it's, they used to be able to have an opinion without having to be canceled.
Mhm.
And now, it's like you have an opinion and you're canceled.
Yeah.
And, but, I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's, whatever. We have to keep it moving, and people still need music.
The world continues to rotate. The sun comes up every morning. Projects need music. Tech companies need to continue to evolve. Conversations like this need to be had.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Look, I mean, I think tough time. The world has gone through tough, difficult moments in history
Yes.
countless times,
Hmm.
and it will go through them again. And
History repeats itself.
this happens to be a shitty bump that we are all very, very aware of. But
Mhm.
I'm with you. Look, you got to keep your head down, control the things you can control, and just try and be happy. And if things don't make you happy, just don't do them.
Hmm. Support the causes you want to support.
100%.
Yep. But yeah, this was a great conversation.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Justin. It was really great to connect with you. I'm going to start digging into more of your work and continue to be inspired by people like you with all of your hard work and everything that you're doing. Thank you very much for chatting with me and taking the time out of your evening.
I'm very grateful that you even wanted to talk to me. It's always nice.
Yes, of course. This was great. So before I let you go, how can listeners keep up with you and reach out to you if they have any questions about anything you mentioned in the
Well,
show?
first of all, I'm always very eager to give out my email address and my contact information and it's funny, I'll tell you this, they almost never use it. Seriously. Like I'll go and speak at conventions or go speak at, South by Southwest, and I'll give a room full of 300 people my email address. I'll get like one email. So, because I always wanted to know how to contact somebody. So really simple. If you want to hit me, you can hit me at jgray, the letter J, Gray, at midio.com, which is at mdio.com. That's a best email address to hit me at. Or of course, my Instagram is I am Justin Gray. And find me, reach out, and I'm eager to listen and give advice and whatever. I'm always around.
Cool. Yeah, and I'll put that in the show notes as well for people that
For
usually
sure.
reach
I'm
out.
super supportive of talent. I didn't have a lot of musical mentorship as I was growing up, so I've always tried to make a point of being available to, trying to help the next generation as much as possible.
Amazing. And that's what this show is all about, is sharing education from industry professionals like yourself, and then
Appreciate it.
hopefully building a connection and allowing people to reach out and ask those difficult questions.
Well, and I appreciate people like you. It's
Thank you.
It's you're a smart person, and you ask good questions, and this time flew by.
It did. It's already been an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Justin. Take care. Stay safe out there, and we'll connect again soon.
I hope so. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye,
Talk
Justin.
soon. Bye-bye.